The Real Estate Roundup segment keeps you updated on the latest in the real estate world, whether you're interested in residential or commercial. This segment's got you covered. I'll invite guest experts to share insights to discuss the subjects that you want to hear more about. And you know what? Speaking of guest experts, tonight you'll hear from one. Tonight we're talking residential real estate, specifically the crucial role of a closing attorney in a home buying and selling process. Joining me is Casey Cole Esquire, the experienced real estate attorney and owner of Harmony Title, servicing Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We're going to break down some important questions like, why do people need a closing attorney? What exactly does a closing attorney do? And is title insurance really necessary? If you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate, this is a conversation that you don't want to miss. Let's bring in Casey out from backstage and get to it. All right, let's see here. Sorry, technical difficulties. Live show. Oh, there she is. Okay. How's it going, Casey?
Hi.
All right. So I know I kind of gave you an intro, but you know what? Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience and tell them all about what you do and who you are and all that fun stuff?
Sure. I'm Casey Cole. I am the only attorney at Harmony Title PC. I do real estate closings. I'm licensed in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I've been practicing since 2012, so got a few years under my belt at this point. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's get into stuff here. So why do people actually need a closing attorney? Why do people need Oh, I'm sorry. Before I even ask that, I apologize. If there are any real estate agents or actually anybody else that has any questions about closings and anything that a closing attorney might, just ask them. We might not be able to answer them all, but at least you can get the questions in, and Casey can follow up with you if we don't get to it. Right, Casey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So if you have any questions and you're watching this live, hey, we might be able to answer some live, or I should say she might be able to answer some live. Or if you are watching the replay and you do comment, we will follow up. Mm-hmm. With that being said, let me get back to that. So, Casey, why do people actually need a closing attorney?
So in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, where I practice, it's actually required. They're called attorney states, which means that you have to have a licensed attorney perform a real estate closing. That's not like that in every state. Some states can be done just by title companies, which aren't supervised by attorneys. But in Mass and Rhode Island, it's required. And
before you go on, because I don't want to cut you off in the middle of something else, but yeah, I do remember that when I did residential real estate back in 2003 to 2008 down in sunny South Florida, we used a title company all the time, and we did not use an attorney. So it's not an attorney state. So that's funny that you mentioned that. Anyhow, sorry, go right ahead.
That's okay. So even if you're not in an attorney state, right, a real estate purchase is probably your biggest investment that a normal person is going to have, right? It's buying real estate, buying and selling. So I just think even if you're not in an attorney state, why would you not want an attorney? This is a legal transaction. It's a legal conveyance of ownership in the property from one party to another, and all the things that come along with that, such as liens on the property and all these potentially costly disasters that could come up in the future, that I think it's really important to have a licensed attorney reviewing all of that for you and making sure that your interests are protected.
I got a follow-up question to that. Sure. I've heard before people not using an attorney or not. I'm sorry, it's a attorney state, so you got to, but people not wanting to use an attorney sometimes in a non-attorney state like Florida. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they think that the attorney is going to slow things up or gum things up. You know what I mean? That's the feel down that way anyway. What do you got to say about that? Anything at all? I don't know if you have any experience with non-title states and non-attorney states and any of that.
any experience in not non-attorney states, but I can see the concern. I can see even, when I'm practicing, there are certain attorneys who might, make things a little more difficult. That's why I think it's important to just establish a relationship with your attorney. Make sure you get to know the person, how they work, and if that's the type of fit for you. I always view my role as, how can we make this work? How can we get to the closing table? Obviously, protecting my client's legal interests at the same time. But I never want to create more issues than need to be created. I want to look for any potential issues and solve them and work together with the other side to solve them. And I think for the most part, from the attorneys that I've worked with, that seems to be how most real estate closing attorneys work. Like, we're very cordial with each other. We all try to figure things out and solve things. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I really like what I do. I like being a real estate attorney as opposed to other attorneys who view their whole role as fighting.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I other attorneys or some attorneys can gum up the works, but that's great that you try to get it done, but you still have your client's interest at best, of course.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
uh,
things come up, issues come up, and so the best approach, I think, is, okay, then how do we solve it to get the deal closed?
Awesome. So that brings me to the next question. And by the way, just before I do get to it, we don't have any questions in the comments yet. So if anybody does have a question, a closing question, or just a real estate question in general, for an attorney, go ahead and just ask it. And like I said, if we can't, or she can't answer it now, she'll be able to get back with you. Anyhow, so the next question I have, and if you have one, chime in on the comments. Like I said, what exactly does a closing attorney actually do?
Sure. I think a lot of people probably have that question, because most of my interaction with the clients is when we're sitting at the closing table and I'm saying, sign here, sign here, sign here. But there's a lot more to my job than just showing people where to sign and date documents. So basically, just I'll kind of go from the role of the closing attorney, the buyer's attorney. I should have maybe explained that before. The closing attorney is typically the buyer's attorney, or the attorney for the lender that's lending the buyer the money for the purchase. The seller doesn't always have an attorney, so maybe I should have mentioned that before. If the seller doesn't want to hire their own attorney, the closing attorney can prepare the deed and other legal documents that may be required. However, I think a seller, again, should have their own attorney looking out for their own interests. The closing attorney's role is going to be representing the buyer or the mortgage lender. Yes, they can prepare legal documents for you, but they're not looking out for your best interests, or maybe working for you as hard as they would be. But
I was gonna say there's got to be, if I was the seller, I want some sort of representation, if especially if the buyer's gonna have representation, because like you just said, yeah, the buyer's attorney will get some paperwork prepared for the seller, but again, they're working as the best interest for the buyer.
correct.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but when I'm the closing attorney, I start my file by doing a title exam, which is just examining all the legal records that are recorded in the registry of deeds on that property for the last 50 years for a purchase. So we actually go back, we look at every deed from the last 50 years. We want to make sure that each transaction was done properly, so that the person who currently owns the house and is selling to my buyer has the legal right and fully owns that property, and there were no issues from any of the deeds prior into them. We're also searching for mortgages or any other liens that are recorded against the property. We need to know exactly what needs to be done in order to ensure that my buyer is getting the property with no issues from the previous owner. We'll also order a plot plan, which is just like a scaled drawing of the dimensions of the property, the lot, right? And then it shows you where the structures are on the property. So if they're the house, obviously, sheds, garages, anything like that. And the purpose of the plot plan is to alert the buyer to potential issues if there are any encroachments. So either say the house you're buying, the shed is partially on the neighbor's land. if you didn't have a plot plan and you didn't know to order a plot plan because you didn't use a closing attorney, that could be a huge issue for you down the road, right? If the neighbor's like, hey, your shed's in my yard, you need to tear it down, or even worse, the house is partially over the property line, which I have actually seen in the past. That's actually happened. The plot plan
Oh,
came back
no.
and the house was over the property line. So that could
Wow.
be a huge issue for the buyer down the road that obviously you want to deal with before the closing. We also order an MLC, which is a municipal lien certificate. That's just a document that comes from the city or the town where the property is located, saying if there are any municipal liens, like a tax lien on the property. So basically, we're just gathering all kinds of information, making sure that we have everything cleared up for the buyer to own it outright.
Make sure the buyer is the buyer and the seller is the seller.
Exactly. And make sure the buyer is not inheriting any issues from the current seller. That's the main goal.
Can I ask you if you can think of any outside the box, off the wall issues that have happened as far as inheritances that or could have inherited, that a buyer could have inherited from a seller?
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of things, and this is kind of goes into when I know you said we want to talk about title insurance a little bit, so maybe I'll explain that in more detail when we talk about
Sure.
that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back to what we also do is obviously drafting and reviewing legal documents. So I usually get involved at the purchase and sale agreement stage. If I'm representing a seller, I'll draft the purchase and sale agreement. It's usually the seller side that does that. So if I'm on the buyer side, I'm reviewing the purchase and sale agreement that was drafted by the seller's attorney, just to make sure that my clients are protected, make sure that any contingencies that they need in there. So most common, we have a financing contingency. So if the buyer can't get the mortgage that they need, they're able to back out of the deal and get their deposit back. Or an inspection contingency, so they can have the home inspected. And if the inspection results come back bad, something that the inspector alerts them to a potential issue that could be costly in the future, the buyer would have the right to back out again and get their deposit back. So those are kind of just the main issues I'm reviewing, but there are a lot of things that people can sneak into a purchase and sale agreement. So if you don't have a lawyer reviewing that for you, it's often like, let's say a 8 or 9 page document. You're not going to know what you're signing, most likely, if you don't have it reviewed by an attorney.
Right. Someone to break it down to you, like what it says without reading all the fine print and trying to translate it.
Yep. And then we also draft all the legal documents needed for closing. So I'm drafting the deed, I'm drafting the mortgage if that's needed. We draft, anybody who's ever been to a real estate closing knows there's like a lot of people that you have to sign. So, we're drafting most of those documents. If there's a loan involved, some of them come directly from the bank, but we draft a good portion of them. We also collect and disperse all the funds. So that's hugely important. You want to make sure that everybody's getting paid that should be paid. So again, the buyer is not inheriting any issues if somebody didn't properly pay off a more outstanding mortgage or a tax lien, etc. So that's a big part of my job, is collecting all the funds and properly accounting for every penny.
Jeez. I mean, I don't know, it kind of sounds like a little bit in there that you may end up doing a lot of the real estate agents work in some instances, just in some cases, because of just the nature of being involved in so much. You're relied on heavily.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to like the relationship between real estate agents and the closing attorney. There are some that want me to do certain things and some that do it themselves. And so it's kind of like we just get to know each other and know how each of us prefer to work. And I kind of have a different understanding with different agents that I work with, depending on their needs.
Sure.
Yeah. And then we also issue title insurance.
Yeah. So title insurance, is that actually what is it for the audience, obviously? And is it really needed? Is it necessary? And for all these are really for the audience, but is title insurance, what is it, and is it really necessary?
Okay. So title insurance is a one-time purchase. You pay for it at closing. You don't have to pay for it again. Unlike, car insurance, homeowners insurance, you have to pay for it every year. And also, unlike car and homeowners insurance, title insurance protects you against any issues from the past, as opposed to car and homeowners that protects you against future problems. So, like I was saying, when we do the title exam, we examine all these documents in the registry of deeds going back 50 years. But we can only examine what's there for us to see. So I go online and go to the registry of deeds. Well, in Massachusetts, it's registry of deeds. In Rhode Island, it's at the town hall. But regardless, I look at all the legal records and I can only see what's there. So, for example, misspelling. This is, humans are inputting this information into the records, into the registries where you have to go search, and there's human error in anything. So, for example, if I'm saying Jason Harris owned this property for 20 years and I'm searching Jason Harris for liens, but somebody spelled your name wrong, or, just a
Left
typo.
the letter out.
Yeah. And a lien doesn't show up in my exam, but it still exists.
Oh, what a
That could be
nightmare.
an issue for the buyer down the road. And even with a perfect title exam, a lot of people think, oh, well, I have the attorney do the title exam. Why do I need title insurance? It's for things that wouldn't show up even in a perfect title exam. So the biggest one by far is just the errors in the public records. There are many mistakes. Sometimes that it's noted as the wrong property address, the names are spelled incorrectly, etc. These things happen. Another issue that can come up would be like forged deeds. So how about if, and that's actually becoming a huge issue nowadays,
Really?
seller impersonation. Yeah, it's scary because, a lot of things are done remotely now. So you have these sellers who are saying, or these like sellers who are saying, oh, I'm selling my property, and they'll do a mail away closing and just mail in the deed that's notarized. Could be made up, could be not the actual seller, not the actual owner of the property.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's actually becoming an issue. So forged deeds, again, if I'm just looking at records on a computer screen that says Jason Harris signed this deed, I don't know what Jason Harris's signature looks like. It's there, it's signed where it's supposed to be, it's notarized. I'm checking that off my list. So that's another issue that could come up. Another issue would be like if a prior owner of the property died and it was sold from their estate or by their heirs, and then 10 years down the road, another heir shows up and says, oh, but hey, wait, I didn't sign that. And I'm actually his heir and I actually own 1/3 of the property. And and that person has a legal claim of a third interest in your property. That's a huge issue. Title insurance would cover that. Title insurance will cover the legal costs to fight the claim, or they cover you up to the purchase price that you paid. So if you end up, God forbid, like losing the house, you would get the money back that you paid for it. So is title insurance required? No. Owner's title insurance is optional, which means the buyer, for the title insurance to protect the buyer, it's optional. I can't understand why, because I will tell you, I would never buy real estate without title insurance. It's hugely important. Just think about what you stand to lose, which is potentially your entire property. And the cost is so minimal. It's a one-time cost. I should have looked this up before I came on. I apologize. I don't know off the top
X amount per the sales price.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
But like, just as a rough idea, typical sales price is like 400, 500, 400,000, somewhere around in that ballpark. I think the owner's title insurance on that is like $800 to $1,000 roughly.
Okay. So a fraction, yeah.
It's like,
And it's at one time, like you said.
and the downside of not having it is so huge that I would highly, highly recommend anybody buying property get title insurance. But just to clarify, when I said owner's title insurance, there's two types of title insurance. There's lenders and owners. So if you buy a house with a lender with a mortgage, they require you to get lenders and title insurance. A lender will not lend for a purchase without title insurance.
Of
So
course not.
I'll tell you something. It's important.
Right. CYA. Cover
Yeah,
your ass. But
exactly.
seriously though, if not anything for the human error part of it anyway, at least.
Yeah, and I mean it happens. Humans make mistakes, you know,
It
and
does.
it's fairly common.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of different crazy stuff myself, and I highly recommend anyone get owner's title insurance if you buy cash or what have you, for real.
Mhm.
Um, all right. So, uh, anything else that you'd like to add tonight, Casey?
I would just say for the real estate professionals that might be in your audience, like real estate agents, you know, I just think it's important to develop a relationship with a closing attorney. Obviously, I hope it's me, but if it's not, you know, it can be such an asset to you. I have so many real estate agents that I'm really close with that text me, that call me fairly regularly. Hey, quick question, and I try to always be there for those because it's important. That's not your role as a real estate agent. You're not supposed to know all the laws or how to properly word something. I get a lot of phone calls about, oh, I'm putting in an offer, how should I word this, we want to ask for this, etc. So it is important, and especially because, like I was saying, I get a lot of questions about offers because, as you know, Jason, the process goes, right, the buyer puts in an offer, then that offer is accepted, then you go to purchase and sale agreement. And a lot of people think that it's not a contract until you get to the purchase and sale. No, an offer is a contract, and it's very important, and that's often 99% of the time done before the attorney gets involved. So if you're a real estate agent and you even have an inkling of a question of, am I doing this right, just ask the question. Because if I am asked to draft a purchase and sale agreement and I get an offer that's already signed, and then the agent says, oh, but by the way, my client needs a contingency for this, unless the other side just voluntarily agrees to it, I can't add a term in a purchase and sale agreement that wasn't in the offer.
Right.
So,
No, that's awesome. So, listen to Casey. Relationships matter. In commercial real estate, Janus Realty Group, we have relationships with licensed site professionals. That's for like contaminated 21E issues.
mhm.
We have good relationships with appraisers, because a lot of commercial appraisals can be hard to come by, or some of them can be very difficult. It's nice to have relationships with appraisers. And then another relationship that we have is with well, we just have a ton of different I don't want to give out all our secrets now. We have a lot of good relationships. So Casey makes a good point to have relationships with other professionals in your industry. It just helps, everybody helps everybody out, and it's just a positive thing all around.
Yeah.
uh,
A lot of times people are like, oh, I hate to bother you, but no, bother me, because I'd rather you ask the question now than us trying to clean up a mistake 2 weeks from now.
right, little preventive maintenance here.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So, Casey, thanks for sharing your expertise. This has been incredibly valuable discussion. Anyway, I'm sure that once people do see it on the replay as well, they'll have questions, and they'll go ahead and put them in the comments. And like I said, we'll follow up.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're in Massachusetts or Rhode Island and need a trusted real estate attorney, reach out to Casey and Harmony Title for expert guidance. You know, um, thank you very much, Casey, and we'll see you again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. So I want to know from at home, what questions do you have about real estate closings or title insurance? Drop them in the comments. Like I said, we'll follow up. Me, myself, or Casey will follow up and get you the answers you need. And I'm going to shamelessly plug myself here and my team. If you didn't already know, I'm with Nuss Realty Group. There we are right there. We are a commercial real estate brokerage and consulting firm out of Braintree, Massachusetts, servicing all of Eastern Massachusetts. And we specialize in commercial real estate transactions, including sales and leases. And we also consult on a variety of commercial real estate related matters, including but not limited to nonprofits, religious and otherwise, potentially environmentally compromised properties, and transit oriented development as well. Other services do include commercial lease audits. And if you or anyone you know owns a commercial real estate property or a commercial property and wants to know its worth on the current market, we can do a commercial broker opinion of value for you. If you or someone you know is in need of a commercial real estate professional, please contact us directly or comment on this video and we'll follow up with you. And the other thing is too, we also work with residential real estate brokers. So if you happen to be a residential agent or broker in need of commercial expertise, please don't hesitate to connect with us for assistance. We do referrals. What real estate topics are you wanting to know more about? Residential, commercial, or something completely different? I'd really appreciate it if you'd share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're watching on the replay, like I said, your input is just as valuable. Your feedback will guide and create